Shalom, it is Tehila from the Kifar. I haven't done a Hebrew tutorial in a while, so I'm going to do one today just talking about Hebrew verbs. So I know that's a huge category, so we're not going to get too into it, just going to give you like a general overview, explain some of the terms that you might hear when we talk about Hebrew verbs, and just give you like a basic introduction. Check out the new website if you haven't already, thekifar.com. I am also offering 6 to 8 weeks Hebrew classes starting in November. I'm doing 4 courses in November, so definitely check that out, thekifar.com/Hebrew. Registration starts next month, and class sizes are limited to 5 people, so definitely stay on top of that if it's something that you're interested in. And the other thing, I am going to mention a few of the pronouns in this video, so if you need a refresher or you need to learn the pronouns, I have a video of that as well on YouTube, so you can check that out, okay? So let's jump right in. So Hebrew verbs, the infinitives fit into 7 different categories or structures that we call binyani, plural. So binyan, singular, is a building, which is like a structure. So the structure that we fit the various infinitives into. And like I said, there are 7 of them. I'm not going to go into what they are now because, again, this is just a general overview. But I will come back to binyanim a little bit later on in this video. So I mentioned the word infinitive. So the infinitive is the to form of the verb. So for instance, to eat, to run, to swim, to dance, to sleep, whatever it is that has that to in front of it, that's what we call the infinitive form of the verb. So the infinitives in Hebrew, they all begin with a lamed. And lamed as the prefix means to or for. And when we're talking about verbs, it means to. So that's what gives us the to do whatever. So I'll give you a few examples. We have to eat, le'echol. So say for instance, I want to eat, ani rotza le'echol. Okay? To sing, lashir. So we see that initial lamed again here. I want to sing, ani rotza lashir. I'll give you one more. To sleep is lishon. So ani lo rotza lishon, ani lo rotza, I don't want, lishon is to sleep. So one thing that you'll notice is sometimes there are often different vowels that come with the lamed. So here it's le, like le'echol, to eat. We have la, lashir, to sing, and then li, and lishon, to sleep. So it's not the vowel that makes it the infinitive, it's that initial lamed that means to whatever, to eat, to sing, or to sleep. The other thing about infinitives is in Hebrew, we know that a lot of things depend on the gender or they change whether you're talking about one or multiple persons. The infinitive doesn't depend on any of that. It stays the same. So for instance, if I wanted to say he wants to eat instead of I want to eat, hu rotze le'echol. So the le'echol doesn't change just because it's a male who wants to eat now instead of a female. And the same thing where if we're talking about multiple people, like we want to sing, anachnu rotzim lashir. So again, that doesn't change. So the infinitive stays the same. Let's say, though, you want to be able to use the verb in the past, the present, or the future tense. So that's when we talk about conjugating the verb, which is adjusting it so that we can use it in those other forms. Because we can only use this in those instances where you want to say to do something, like I want to eat, I don't want to sleep, I'm going to school to learn, etc., etc. But if I want to say, and we're going to use the verb to learn for these examples, I learned something yesterday in the past, or I'm learning today in the present, or I will learn something in the future, then I need to conjugate it. In order to conjugate verbs in Hebrew, you need the root of the verb, or the shoresh. So shoresh is the Hebrew word for root. And the way that you find the root is a little bit different depending on the binyan, depending on the type of infinitive that you have. So I'm not going to go into, again, how to do that. But the first step generally across the board is you're going to get rid of that initial lamed. You're getting rid of the thing that makes it to do whatever. So that's the first thing you're going to do. So I told you I was giving you another verb for to learn or to study. And this verb is lilmod. Okay? So we said we're going to get rid of that initial lamed. And in this case, we get rid of this. And so we're left with lamed, mem, and dalet. And so As a general rule, there are exceptions, but as the general rule, the shoresh, or the root in Hebrew, are 3 letters. So in this case, in the case of this verb, the lamed, the mem, and the dalet, this is the root. These are the 3 letters that make up our root. So it's lamad. So what this means is, when we conjugate lil mode, to learn, into the past, the present, or the future tense, we're going to see these 3 letters in those conjugations. So I'll just do that for you as an example. Let's say past tense. I learned something yesterday. So I learned, ani lamadti. So, lamadti. So this is past tense, and you see here, here's the lamed, here's the mem, and here's the dalet from our shoresh. Let's say present tense. I'm learning or I'm studying. Ani lomedet. Again, here's the lamed, here's the mem, here's the dalet from our shoresh. Okay, so we have past, we have present, and let's say future. Like tomorrow, I'm going to learn something or I'm going to study. Ani elmad. Again, there's your lamed, there's your mem, and there's your dalet. So the root comes from the infinitive, and it's sort of what ties all of these things together so you know what this verb is saying. Okay? Now, you will have, in a lot of cases in Hebrew, verbs that have different infinitives, but they share a root. So they fall into a different binyan, right? A different category, a different structure of verb, but they have the same root. And what that means, majority of the time, again, there are always exceptions, but most of the time, it means that the words are somehow related to each other. So this infinitive is lil mode, which is to learn or to study. Now here's another infinitive that I'm going to give you, and this is lilamed. Now, you'll see here, if you notice, when we get rid of that initial lamed, when we find the shoresh, we see the lamed, the mem, and the dalet. So lamad, this is the same exact shoresh from lilamed that we see in lil mode. So it's the same shoresh. So what that means is, let's say you only know lil mode, to learn or to study. You don't know this verb. This is a new verb for you. Because you know that this has to do with learning and studying, because they have the same shoresh, it's both lamad, you can guess that it's probably something related to learning. And you would be right. So lil mode is to learn or to study. Lilamed is to teach. Okay, write that down really quick. And this is to teach. Okay? And so learning and teaching are things that are related. And so when I conjugate this, the conjugations, again, are going to be different from these, just like the infinitive is different. However, the root is the same. So the root is sort of what ties them together, but the infinitives are where we get the different meanings. So lil mode versus lilamed. So again, if I wanted to say, I taught, past tense. So I learned, lamadti. I taught, limadti. Okay, so limadti. So again, different pronunciation, different spelling, same root. Okay, and these are not vowel markings. I'm just underlining the shoresh. Okay, present tense for learn or study is lomedet, for singular feminine, ani lomedet. For I am teaching, like what I'm doing right now, ani melamedet. So again, this is a different infinitive. It's a different form. It's a different verb, but it shares the same root. It shares the shoresh. Okay, so ani melamedet. Again, here goes the lamed, there's the mem, there's the dalet of our root. And future tense. So I will learn, ani elmad. For future tense, for to teach, sorry, these letters are throwing me off. For future tense, for to teach would be alamed. So alamed. And again, there are the letters in our shoresh. And then you also see how you'll also have nouns or adjectives that also share that same root, and that also shows you that things are related. So for instance, there's a word, this is a noun, writing this in a different color, talmid. Okay? For feminine, it's talmida. Here you see here lamed and the mem and the dalet. So even if you don't know this word, you can hazard a guess that it probably has something to do with education, teaching or learning. And a talmid or talmida for feminine is the word for student. Because what does a student do? They learn, they study, they're taught. Okay? Another example of a noun that has the same root. Limudim. Here comes the lamed. Here's the mem. Here's the dalet. And limudim are studies. And so this is just, I know, hopefully it wasn't too fast. Sometimes I tend to go really fast. I think fast, so I try to get stuff out as it's popping into my head. But like I said, this is just a really brief overview just to show you a little bit of how verbs work and the differences between the infinitive form, which is that to form of the verb, what it means when we say to find the shoresh or the root, and then how that presents itself in the various conjugations of the verb, whether it's the past, the present, or the future tense. And Hebrew is actually very logical and very orderly, and so once you do start to learn the binyanim, and I will have a class on Hebrew verbs, Bezrat Hashem, in January of next year, but when you start to understand the different categories, it really opens up a whole new world, because verbs really do fit neatly into those categories. And so once you start to understand the pattern, and once you're able to recognize roots, you can come across a new verb or something that you've never heard before and automatically know how to conjugate it because it follows the pattern of the other verbs in that binyan, in that structure. And also you'll have a sense of what it means because you recognize the root from something else. So, it all comes full circle. It's all very useful information. And that about wraps it up. So if you have any questions, feedback, anything else at all, suggestions for new video topics or things that you really want to learn about, let me know in the comments below. Check out the website again, thekifar.com. And toda rabah for watching. All right, Lana Tov.